Guys, I'll let you guys fire away.
Jason, this is quasi-draft related, but we'll start with the obvious. Devin White reportedly has asked for a trade. First of all, is that true? And I suppose that if you were willing to go down that avenue, it might affect the draft in some way. But what can you say about Devin and where that situation is at?
Yeah, well, first of all, we all have all the respect in the world for Devin. He's done some great things for us as a player, and we look forward to more from him in the future. So he's on our team. We are looking forward to this season. We're gearing up for this season with the draft right now, free agency, and looking forward to him being a part of this team. And if he has the kind of year that we all think he's capable of, we can hopefully put this to rest, and everybody's happy.
So just to reiterate, no intention of trading him at this time?
No intention.
And you're confident that there wouldn't be a level of discontent where he would hold out or not play on this contract this year?
Yeah, I can't look into the future. Like I said, we have utmost respect for Devin, and it's part of the business world of this job that we have that I don't like. But he's a competitor. He's a player. Everybody holds him in high regard.
Jason, at the same time, you've got another linebacker that you re-signed in Levante David, who at some point in time is going to be too old to play and retires only on a one-year deal. Is this the year, maybe with the uncertainty of Devin, you can't control if he holds out or not, and with Levante possibly being in his last year, that you look for a linebacker in this draft to replace potentially one or the other of those guys as soon as next year? And if so, what does this linebacker class look like, the inside linebacker?
Yeah, this is going back a few years, we've come very close to taking inside linebackers high just because we know the depth of that position, how important it is, not to necessarily replace Devin and Levante in the last few years at all, but you can never just, the last few years, depth has proven to be one of the things that has been related to our success winning the Super Bowl. So we're never not looking at the middle linebackers or the inside linebackers. So this year, I wouldn't say there's always some good players at every position in every draft. I wouldn't say that that's a strength of this draft. So, but yes, we're always looking, and if it's at the right time, at the right place, the right fit, we wouldn't be afraid to take one. No.
Jason, I know you guys always look for leadership and draft a lot of captains and college team leaders. Your team will be a lot younger this year. I think of your 13 oldest players from last season, only 2 of them are back under contract right now. Do you put more of a thought toward drafting guys that can be future leaders, that can be people that will step up as the next generation of Bucs, or is that something you already have kind of front of mind?
Well, that's a quality we look for in all of the players that we draft. I mean, not all players can be captains. All players can be leaders in one way, shape, or form, whether they're a servant leader or an outgoing leader, whatever it is. So, but yeah, it's a quality we look for in all of our players. And when players tend to become more and more viewed as a leader, the more and more they play, and the better and better they play. So, but it's obviously, and the best players in college are the ones we're drafting, so they're viewed as leaders. So, but we do like that quality of being voted on as a team captain by your peers.
Speaking of leaders, back to Devin, is it concerning at all the fact that you do have a team captain that has expressed a level of frustration over the way things have gone?
Like I said, we have the utmost respect for Devin. You guys know him as well as we do. He's a great guy, and so we're looking forward to this year, and we're looking forward to him having a great year.
How working without Tom Brady going forward, without that all-in, consuming philosophy, how does that affect your approach to this draft in terms of, hey, now we need more draft capital, we're building, or make it less likely that you would move up to get that one piece? We got Brady, let's maximize it. How does that whole thing affect the draft?
I'll be honest with you, Ira. We're not really changing anything we're doing in the draft in terms of that is not affecting us. I mean, if you walk through the halls in our scouts and our coaches, I mean, people are all in up there. I mean, we're trying to win. So we're trying to bring in the best players that we can this year, and it's no different than we have in the past. Now, we have, just because of the fact that we've lost quite a few players that were contributors to us and helped us win the Super Bowl and helped us have some good seasons here lately, there's probably a few more areas of need across the roster than we did, like in 2021 when we brought everybody back. And now looking back on that was quite a feat that our team was able to do. So, but we're still looking to add depth, add good players, look to the future. If they can play early, that's great. But we're not trying to pinpoint one particular thing. This guy will be able to start week one, as opposed to this guy who's going to become greater, a better player in 2 years. We're still going to look for what's best for the
You
future.
wouldn't say you're looking for more immediate contributors than the last 3 years necessarily?
Well, if they can, that's great. If they can, that's great. But, I mean, if you have that ability to look into the future and see, I mean, you can say a guy's going to play right away, but it doesn't always work out that way. You still want to develop these players.
What would you say, Jason, is your number one priority going into the draft, or your top need? Is it speed? Is it line, offense and defensive line? What would you say is your top priority?
Well, like I said, we have a lot of areas that we could improve or upgrade or add depth to. So I would say we do need to get faster. We do need to get more physical.
Jason, if hypothetically, you would draft a pass rusher, and I know generally they don't have a big impact on a rookie year, what would you consider a good rookie year for a pass rusher?
Helping us win games. playing hard, playing well, affecting the quarterback, helping us, play good defense. Whether sometimes it's not in the stats. A lot of people want to relate it to the stats, but it's not always in the stats.
Jason, you visited with a couple quarterbacks in this draft, and you're picking 19th. There are a lot of quarterbacks. Can you just talk about your philosophy in terms of just that position? Clearly, you've made a move with Baker Mayfield. You have Kyle. You're still going to add more, but just looking ahead and just trying to always address that position, winning if you can.
Yeah, it's the toughest position to find. It's the most important position on the team. You see teams that in consecutive years take them in top 10. We have an unknown in Kyle. We have Baker, who's had some great years, and now we're hoping that he shows up here this year in that competition, and we get the best out of one of them, or both of them. But I would not be afraid to take another quarterback, because might as well have another shot at it. So maybe not this year, but maybe in the future.
Jason, Todd had talked about wanting to have Winfield back at home at free safety, and Murphy Bunting is gone now, so you kind of have a bit of a hole at nickel. It's not a starting job necessarily, but it's probably a 70% snap job.
We consider it a starting job, yeah.
Right. How much of a priority is that, and what would be your best in-house options right now if you didn't address it in the draft?
Well, we know that Antoine played it last year. I mean, so that's always an option. And that'd be a better question for Todd. But, we have some players that, Zion, we worked him in there. He'll be going into his second year. He's a phenomenal athlete, and we think he's, going to get better and better. We have Chesney on our team, who we did a lot with in practice. But, luckily we don't line up and play in 2 weeks. So our first game is September. So there's a lot of time that can go. We have the draft. We have a lot of June, July, August players become available. So we'll figure it out at some point. I guarantee somebody will be lining up at nickel.
You're going to have to address the offensive line at some point, just from a number standpoint. But like losing Donovan, we talked about possibility maybe Horses play both positions. But in general, when you look at this draft, especially early, there are a number of offensive linemen. What do you make of that position and just, again, another value? We talked about quarterback, right? But those tackles are hard to find, too.
Yeah, the tackles are very hard to find. There's a few good ones that we like, that we've spent a lot of time on. It's a little bit more dominant from the beginning of the draft to the end of the draft this year, I think, with interior linemen. There's some very good ones there, too. So, I mean, we love our offensive linemen. So it's a position that quite possibly we will be addressing. But once again, we have a lot of in-house options as well.
Jason, if you thought that a particular running back who was sitting there at 19 was gonna have a career, maybe like a Barkley, or a Kamara, maybe even a McCaffrey, would part of your brain say, I'm not taking a running back in the first round, there's too many guys out there that are available in the second and third rounds that we can handle, and are you dead set against taking a running back
No.
in the first round?
No, not if you feel like it's going to be a special player.
You feel you're speaking for a lot of GMs, or you heard?
I think it's changed a little bit over the years in that regard. I mean, you ideally want to pick somebody a player that's going to be on your roster if you're picking high for, a decade. But, I mean, they're very few and far between. If you have the crystal ball that can tell me, I'll pay you a handsome, or at least I'll get my owners to pay for it.
Productivity. That's
Right.
what I'm saying. Yeah.
Correct. So it's an offensive dominated league now, and you want as many playmakers as you can get.
Can you speak to the edge rusher class this year, where you think kind of the strength of that class is, maybe versus previous years?
I would say it's probably average in terms of numbers.
And also to that effect, sometimes you see with these pass rushers, they'll have really maybe a productive 1 or 2 years in college, and then maybe their senior year, there's a drop. Are you more inclined to look at the entire college career, or does your attention kind of shift to that last year and kind of wonder? Because again, I know that you can do things to kind of prevent those guys from getting to the quarterback, but
Yeah,
how do you kind of look at that?
We try to look at the whole picture. I wouldn't say that we're going back to their freshman year, but their last 2 years, sometimes going back to in this case, this year's draft, their 2021, because we know what a lot of those players turned out to be that they're going against. So we know that they were going against a really good tackle, for instance, or as opposed to a guy that didn't make it with the team, was on the street. So you have to look to where the production comes from, and you're not just looking at the sack numbers and the pressure numbers. You have to look at the whole play. So there's some players that don't have great stats, but we feel are tremendous pass rushers. They just, for whatever reason, the quarterback, got out of the pocket before he could get there, or they're double teaming him, or whatever the case may be. So you got to look at the whole thing.
Jason, you've been here a decade, and I don't know if it's been because you and your team select good players in the draft, or you find the right type of free agents, or if it's just some luck or whatever. But you have very, very few instances. I'm old. I can't remember had any where you have a holdout situation in training camp, where you've had a player request a trade over money. Does that speak to the type of players that you brought in? Does it speak to you and Greenberg and the front office, and maybe getting ahead of some of these salary type things, before they start? What do you attribute the lack of that? Because you see it more often around the league than you do in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think every case is different. This isn't something I'm holding against Devin. I still feel he's a tremendous person. So I just feel like this is a great place, to play. We've had tremendous coaches, support staff, and ownership. It's obviously an awesome city, and an awesome place to play. And it took us some time, but we got there. But that was because of really starts at the top with ownership. So in this particular case with Devin, I'm not holding it against him. I would never say that he's not the type of teammate that we want because of this.
Jason, I know we're asking about the draft, but it's the first chance we get you here to ask about free agency. And obviously you've operated under a limited budget in the last month, but just ask you how pleased you've been with the guys you've been able to bring in here from outside.
Yeah, it was great to, first of all, to get Levante back and Jamel and then some others. But, with Greg Gaines, a nice piece there for the defensive line. And then Ryan Neal, very excited about him and his desire to want to be here. It turned out he was in Tampa, working out, and Todd was able to slip away. He wasn't a free agent, so it didn't count against our comp and all that kind of stuff. But Todd was able to slip out and have dinner with him and sell him on our place, which did a great job of. So anyway, right, overall, just very happy with where we're at. I don't mean to be leaving anybody out, but it's been great. It's been a lot of fun. It's been challenging, but this year we had a lot of fun doing it, operating under the budget that we had, the cap budget that we had.
How will new offensive coordinator, Dave Canales, how heavily will he be involved in the war room? Because I know he's got to know the players, he's trying to put together the offense, it's a first time. Is he going to be heavily involved in helping pick the offensive players?
Well, we just finished up, meetings with the coaches yesterday. Met for a few days with them, and he dove in. He watched every offensive player. The guy works extremely hard, and we have constant talks with him about how he feels about one player compared to another, even crossing over positions. So he's had his say. Now, the draft room, I kind of operate it a little differently than having everybody in there. It'll be coach and I, and then my scouts and owners. So, but they're always on call to ask him questions.
And will Bruce be involved in this year's draft, Bruce Arians?
Yeah, Bruce has been involved. I've been on the phone with Bruce a lot, and not quite as involved as he was last year, but he's still always a great ear great person to talk to.
Jason, this looks
when
like a
you
pretty
look at
good
your
year
offensive-
for tight ends. I'm sorry,
No.
tight end prospects. Looks like a pretty good year for.
Yeah, it's probably one of the deepest it's been in at least 10 years.
Did Kate show you enough where you're feeling, hey, tight end is not necessarily a priority for us right now?
Cade could have had 100 catches last year, and we'd still be looking at tight end. It's great to have, we love the role that Co has, and we love the role that Cade has. It's always good to have, more weapons.
Jason, when you look at the offensive linemen that you drafted, starting back in 2015, even with Donovan and Ali, and then getting a guy like Alex Kappa, who's a small school find in the 3rd round, Tristan Wirfs, Robert Hainsey, Luke Edeke, the jury's still out, but played for you well at the end of the season. What is it about that position? It seems like out of every position you drafted, that is a position, and you can look to the Super Bowl season, the 13-4 season, your offensive line really kind of led the way. What is it about you and your team? No pressure this year, but your hit rate on getting some of those offensive linemen to become starters, to get second contracts, to go to Pro Bowls, in those premium picks, rounds 1, 2, and 3?
There's no secret to it. First of all, I'm going to say that I have the great staff, and they do a phenomenal job. So, that's just facts. But I was talking about it today with that very same thing with Spytek and Beal and Rob and the scouts, and it seems like the offensive linemen that you mentioned, like Tristan and Allie and Jensen is free agency, but the guys that we just had fun watching while we're evaluating, having fun watching them, those are the guys that we've hit on. So it's not that you don't have fun watching some others, but sometimes you kind of put you to sleep. Okay, he's doing his job, but the one that is getting that little extra in at the end, legal, but just that little extra in at the end, or having a lot of fun playing because you can tell, those are the ones that you usually hit on.
Jason, in 2020, there were 4 tackles that people were talking about in the 1st round. The 4th one was Tristan Wirfs. You're watching him.
Oh, we had him number 1 though.
Yeah, I know you did. Clearly. But regardless, they're coming off the board, and you move up. You move up a space with San Francisco, and they can answer to whether they thought that was a great move or not, but they wanted the receiver. So take me through, was that a stressful time that, you wanted that tackle, you knew who you wanted, and you're watching them disappear? How does all that come together when you're on the clock like that, and you end up with a guy like this?
Well, we started trying to move up before that, and we were striking out. So stressful, yeah, it was stressful. Thank God it was at Zoom. You couldn't see what I had in between my legs, or you couldn't see what I had on the floor. I'm joking. Yeah, so we got some wind that another team was trying to get into San Fran's spot, and their need was tackle as well. So one of their needs that we projected was their top need was tackle. So we went. We had to do it, and I know it looked a little, why are you just moving up one spot and giving up a 4th? But we just wanted to make sure we got our guy. So, and it worked out. But there was a good hour and a half or so of a lot of phone calls and a lot of cursing and a lot of, what do you mean you're not going to take our trade? So it was proof that it takes 2 teams to want to do a trade. So.
In order to do that, you had to forecast, though, that there was going to be a run on tackles, and it was a very good class of offensive tackles.
Yeah, it was.
But, how are you kind of able to determine, obviously, like, this is why you guys get paid the big bucks, but to determine like when there's gonna kind of be, or forecast when there's going to be like a run on a particular position?
Well, you never know exactly when it's going to be, but that year, tackle happened to be a very good, very deep, and one of the top positions in the draft that we felt, and it was a need for us too. But we knew that there would be a run at some point, so we had to go through every slot in front of us. We started at like slot 5 all the way down to, our pick, eventually was 13, and what we would give up and what player would it be, how many players would be remaining that we would want to move up to that. If there's only one remaining, obviously you want to give up more. If there were 4 remaining, you would give up less, or you maybe not move up. But it was just a lot of strategy involved that, Mike and John and Jackie and all of the Mike and Rob and the scouts put in. It was a time-consuming process.
There's some of these players coming out that have COVID super senior season, and they're older because of that. They've played 5 years, some of these guys, sometimes even 6 with a redshirt worth of football. And how do you look at that from an age perspective? Sometimes age, you get a more mature guy, more experience, but you look at that second contract, and he's going to be 29 or 30 by the time he gets it. So how does that factor in to your evaluation on a player? Are some of these guys almost too old to draft, or do they get knocked, or is there a positive for that? You look at it both ways. You kind of nailed it. We've seen it in our interviews that we've had, the 30 that we've brought in, and the ones that we've done on Zoom, and the ones that we did at the Combine. These older players, there is a lot more mature players that seem to have their, I don't want to say life in order, but they just have a little bit more of a different perspective on life than a typical kid that's just coming out of college. But I would say that we still want a great player. We're not going to knock a guy because he's 24 or 25. I mean, if we're projecting and we think that guy's going to get to a second contract and we're going to be deliberating over it, I mean, that's probably the right player to pick. So,
Jason, what is exactly the war room like on draft night? Can you take us into that atmosphere? And is it exciting as maybe a certain movie has made it out to be?
I would say it's a lot different than that. There are some similarities to the movie you're referencing. I kind of like that movie. It's fun. Makes it look like we're doing more than we are. But the work is done. I mean, you've got the board set. You've got, you know who you're targeting. You know who you might move up for and when you might move up. And so it's just kind of you wait and let it fall and see what happens, because it never goes exactly the way you think it's going to, obviously. But every draft is different. Every draft, the way it falls, and there's always surprise players. But you just kind of let it come to you.
Jason, on Robert Hainsey, I'm a little confused. If suppose Wirfs does go to left tackle and very successful, and now you got a hole on the right side. I've never heard Hainsey's name, Jason, from you or anybody talking about competing for a right tackle spot when he played there in college. So does he project just more as an inside lineman?
Yeah, we've just projected him, just the size, the length, the body type is more of an inside player. Now, he played very well at Notre Dame there. And Harold and Joe aren't opposed to giving him a shot. We'll move guys around and see what happens. But he just his skill set is better off inside.
With tackle, it feels a little bit like 20 in that you probably have a need there. You probably know you're not going to get the first 1 or 2 tackles off the board. But there's 4 or 5 guys that go in that range in the top 20. Does it remind you at all of 20? Not that we're asking someone to be worse in this scenario, but
I guess a little bit, in terms of the numbers.
Jason, looking at the interior offensive line, that's going to be the battle for starting guard. How valuable was it bringing back someone like Aaron Stinnie, who probably flew under the radar because he was injured all of last year, but he started in the Super Bowl for you guys and on that playoff?
Yeah, no, we were very excited to get him back, and if he plays at that level again, then we're going to have a good situation on our hands. So he played like a true starter in those 3 games that he played, 3.5 games.
You have a couple guys coming out of major injuries, and I know we saw Ryan Jensen back in that one playoff game against the Cowboys, but just can you give us an update on how Shaq Barrett and Ryan Jensen are progressing in their recoveries?
I think they're both right where they should be. They're right where they should be.
Jason, how is the preparation different leading up to the draft compared to the year before for you?
no different, like same processes, same amount of meetings, just different players. So, I mean, there's always pressure to get good players, but there's no extra pressure really for us this year. It's just the same amount of pressure.
Anybody asked to wear 0 yet?
What's that?
Anybody asked to wear 0?
Not to my, no.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.